You're watching Tim Topham TV, the piano teaching podcast. This is episode number 58. Hi everyone, welcome back. Great to have you with me today, and we've got a great episode, something a little bit different today actually. We've called this one How Passion, Mindset and a Sharpened Saw Can Transform Your Teaching with Tim and Paul. And this is actually a little bit more of a conversation between Paul Myatt and myself in regard to two things, mindset and also professional development. And this is obviously timely because we're running some live events around Australia coming up in the very near future. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about the background of why we're doing it, why we think it's important, and the kinds of things that you're going to get out of it. Now, before we dive right into today's episode, I did want to thank today's sponsor, which is novascore.com. Novascore, as I've said in my previous couple of intros, is my place for grabbing different adaptations of the same piece of music. So music that's produced at different kind of levels for different levels of challenge for students. So quite often the problem I find is, regardless of the type of music, it could be classical, it could be a new hit, it could be gospel, whatever it is, you go online to try and find something maybe on Music Notes or Sheet Music Plus, and the music's just too difficult. The great thing about Novascore is that not only do they have that original score there, they've also then got 2 or 3, sometimes 4 adaptations at a simpler level for students to learn from. And the great thing is that these are created by in-house pianists. They've got the right fingerings, they've got the right phrasings, they're playable, and they sound great. And so even if the music's too hard, jump on there and just check if it's in their catalog, because you may find an easier version ready to go. You can view their music from any device, computer, laptop, tablet, smartphone, and you can print from any laptop or computer as well. So to get 30% off your first order from Novascore, just head to the show notes for today's episode and you can grab the coupon. And those show notes are at timtopham.com/episode 58. So our conversation today is all about passion and mindset. And we'll tell you what the sharpened saw means a little bit later on. It's a little bit of a quote and a reference back to a great author called Stephen Covey and his 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, a book from quite a while ago, but still has 100% relevance today. So we're talking about mindset, and the mindset of the innovative teacher, the creative teacher, and the teacher who is passionate about being the best that they can be. What that actually means and what kind of ways there are available for you to develop habits that actually last. Because half the time, I don't know about you, when I go to conferences, I get, so many great ideas, lots of fantastic things happening, great people, great ideas. I've got notes full of books full of notes, but you get back, you might try something out, but it just doesn't stick because it hasn't formed a habit. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about habits and the importance of those, particularly after live events. And then we're going to go into a little bit more about both Paul's story and my story, and also why we've put on these events. So around Australia coming up in September, October, and November, we've got some live events called Transform Your Teaching. And they are one-day events from about 10 till 3:30. And we're going to be covering a whole lot of different stuff, including improvisation, harmonization, pattern-based teaching, some ideas based around the music learning theory concepts that we've been talking about in the last couple of months, singing, oral stuff. It's going to be practical. And the best thing is all the participants get to sit at a digital piano. So not only will you be able to hear and write down notes about what we're talking about, you can actually try them. And this is one of the best ways to start forming those habits, because you can actually experience the ideas that we've got. So we'll go on and tell you a little bit about what's coming up in these events. If you're not in Australia, I guarantee you're still going to enjoy this interview, because we're talking about bigger mindset kind of ideas that can particularly be challenging when, as I know, the USA have just gone back to teaching in the fall season. And, your mind can just be blown with everything that's going on and scheduling and all this kind of stuff. So sometimes it's a good idea to take some time out to listen to a conversation like this and just reset yourself. Now, if you're interested in finding out more about the events and you're based around Australia, we're traveling to Melbourne, Sydney, Adelaide, Perth, and Brisbane. To find out more and grab a ticket, timtopham.com/transform. All right, and today's episode's show notes and your coupon code for NovaScore will be at timtopham.com/episode 58. So here's the conversation between Paul and me about mindset, passion, and a sharpened saw. Well, Paul, welcome back onto the podcast. I think you're my second only ever repeat guest, so it's great to have you here.
Thank you, Tim.
I'm afraid you're not. I'm afraid you're not the first repeat guest, but the second is just as important. And
exactly.
and today for everyone that's listening and watching, it's going to be a little bit of a different podcast. We're going to be. I'm not going to be asking all the questions today. It's going to be very much a conversation between Paul and I, and we're talking about something that we both think is really, really important, and that's mindset in particular, and how that leads to our take on professional development, and leading then on to some of the live events that we're actually running around Australia in September, October, and November this year. So I think we will see where the discussion actually goes. But I wanted to talk mindset first up, Paul. And in education circles, we hear a lot about this. Creativity mindset. We're trying to encourage growth mindsets in our students. What's all of this about, and why, as teachers, should we be thinking about this as well?
Well, Tim, I think that as teachers, it's really important for us to work with our students to guide them into what it is that they actually want. What is it you'd like to achieve with your music? And I see many times, myself included, I impose, well, we're going to do that grade 3 exam, or we're going to, and sometimes you think, is that really what they want? And it's really trying to establish what their mindset is around. Why do they want to learn music, and what's it going to give to them? And I think it's really about making a discussion, having a discussion with your students, and of course their parents, about what is it that you'd like to achieve with your music. One of the things I sort of say to parents, I would never wish that you would become a professional musician unless you really, really wanted to, but the scientific evidence about learning music is just astronomical. And as you know from your interview with Anita Collins, that there's just so much benefit from learning music, and the students can really benefit from just doing that.
Yeah. I tend to ask all my students, I don't know if you do the same thing, I tend to ask them all, particularly the teenagers, why are you learning piano? What is it that's brought you here? And what would you like to be able to do in 3 years, 5 years, even by the end of this year, particularly if they're just starting and they're 13 or 14? What is it that's brought you here? Because I think it is vital for us to know that, to work out actually what our approach to teaching them should be. Do you tend to take that same line?
I don't teach a lot of teenagers. So I teach a lot of primary age students because I only take students when they're 5 or 6. Yeah. So it's very adult directed at that stage, or parent directed. Yeah. But by the time they're 11 or 12, they're really making their own decisions. And it's really about having a discussion with them. And I find that those kids, to move them through onto higher levels, is really about having that discussion about what is it that you'd like to learn, and building. I think the way I teach, because I teach in classes, that they've built a community in music. So it's really about, I love coming to music because it's fun and my friends are here. So it's a little bit different, I suppose, than one-on-one teaching, which is what you specialize in. Yeah, yeah.
And I remember interviewing Laura Kahar about piano community. It was how to create a community around her piano studio, and she has there's some fantastic outcomes that come from that. So students aren't just there because they know they've got to do their next exam or perform at the end of the year, but they're there because they can chill out with their friends, they can have a laugh, they can have some fun, they can learn some music. It's a different thing.
Yeah, and they can make music together.
Yeah.
And that's, as a pianist, we often never play with anyone. And if you were to be a professional pianist, one of the jobs that you would be is accompanying. And and as you have just done, I know this last week at the A&B, the champion accompanist, and those as a piano teacher, another way to generate income is through accompanying, and so doing a lot of that sort of work, but in a situation, in a learning situation where they can actually play together, they learn to listen and they learn to be able to accompany and hear what the other person is doing, which is a really important skill as an accompanist.
So if we kind of turn this around now from the student mindset to the teachers, I have a feeling that a lot of the teachers that watch and listen to these podcasts have a mindset of wanting to continually improve themselves. That's why they're listening anyway. So in some ways we might be preaching to the converted a little bit, but let's dive a little bit into the mindset of teaching. And what's your thought on that?
Oh, professional development really is my first thing. I spend a great deal of time. Just this year I've done 2 big workshops on professional development. And I think that we have to, and it's a Stephen Covey cliche called, sharpen the saw. And it's about making yourself better so that you can actually impart the knowledge better. So I think from a teaching perspective, one of the first things you can do is actually improve yourself and put yourself in a learning situation. Yeah. Because as a teacher, we sometimes forget what it's like to actually be a learner. And in my hobby job, I'm a swimming coach. And I always say to the people when I coach swimming, you know what my real job is? I'm a piano teacher. And they go, oh, wow. And they go, how does piano and swimming go together? And I said, well, actually, they're really similar to teach because we don't do either of them naturally. We don't naturally swim. We don't naturally play the piano. And they're both very technique-based activities. So the process that you're going to use to teach is going to be very similar.
Yeah. I wrote recently about my experience of learning guitar. And I think in that article, I talked about how maybe 5 years ago, I had to learn how to teach trumpet and trombone because I was asked to teach it in a Year 7 band class at one of my schools. And I'd never taught either of these instruments before. And, when I was asked to do it, I thought, oh, no, the last thing I want to do is learn how to play trumpet and trombone. But I got into it and the experience was absolutely fascinating because I was a complete and utter novice. I had to go and get lessons from the teacher who knew how to play it. And I had to struggle through the basics of making a sound, finding a note, getting the embouchure right. It was a great experience. And when I think about my own mindset and the way I approach things, I have to say that I've learned so much from being in the learner's shoes. And also with my diploma that I did, my performance diploma maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It's exactly the same thing. You're sitting there as a piano student, you suddenly realize it's exactly what it's like. You go in there, you've done all your work and everything falls apart and it's just fascinating, I think.
Exactly. Well, I know all about falling apart. I started learning classical singing about 3 years ago and did my grade 8, got an A for my grade 8, thought, oh, right, I'll just go straight to AMAS and then massive fail.
Right. So we should tell everyone if they're overseas, what's AMAS?
It's a diploma in the performance of a particular instrument, or obviously I was doing classical voice.
And this is run by the AMEB, who's the Australian Music Exam Board. So what happened?
Wasn't ready, really. I'm busy, and I thought I could get away with not doing as much practice as I really needed to. But I suppose the exam was about a month too early, and I was singing a Bernstein piece that was my accompanist and I actually got from the start to the end on the Wednesday before the exam for the first time.
Oh, God.
It was never going to end well.
Oh, no.
But it was a great learning experience. It was, it was really about getting back on the horse and going again and going, well, I learned something from that. I learned, actually, I do need to do a little bit more work. And I'm not really as clever as I thought I was. And that's a really good one for kids as well, because I know I've had kids that get A's for for grade 1, and then they get a C for grade 2 or grade 3. And it's like they had to learn that they actually have to put the work in, whereas before they were talented. So it's a really good thing for us to learn as well. And it certainly was great for me to experience that. But I'm back on the horse. I'm going to do it again next year. And I do it as my hobby. I sing with the symphony chorus in Sydney, so I get to sing beautiful music, but it's just about fun. But it's really, again, putting yourself into that learning experience.
I don't know how you do it all. Coaching, swimming. You coach running as well?
I do.
So you do that. You run a large music school, a set of music schools. You teach yourself. You do some singing on the side. You sing in the Sydney Philharmonia chorus. Let's talk for a moment about how you actually find the time to put into these professional development activities.
Well, it's all about working on your own timetable, I suppose, and which is what I do with my kids. You know, like my kids come and go, "Oh, I didn't have time to practice this week. I was so busy." This is from an 8-year-old. I'm like, really? Yeah. Let's just talk about that. And so I think that, you know, one of the best things I think as teachers that we can do for our students is actually create a timetable, a weekly timetable. In fact, I've got some notes we can put up on the show notes with a timetable that people can use. As the piano teacher, we're often the recipient of so much knowledge, some of it that we don't necessarily want to know. You know, kids tell us any number of things, as do parents sometimes. But we can help. You know, and help managing time is a really important thing, because a lot of people aren't good at managing time, especially kids. And so that's
we do expect a lot from them, don't we?
We do, I think.
Yeah.
So from my own experience, I have to manage my time really, really well. I think, and as I know you are interested in, because you're also a qualified PE teacher, really interested in sport and fitness, as I am. And I think that allows us to be able to do all the things that we do because we have the level of energy and the health to be able to do that. And that's an important thing as well.
Yeah, I think health is very important. I was listening to a podcast about that for an entrepreneur's podcast and the importance of keeping healthy and how that's starting to go virtual now. I don't know if you've heard of the latest trend in PTs is virtual PTs, where you get texts from people every day saying, okay, this is your workout for today. And at the end of the day, they say, right, what did you eat? You tell me this kind of thing. And they train people all around the world. It's very interesting. Very interesting.
I think I'd be really good at that. I respond very well to texts.
Now, I should clarify, I'm not a fully qualified PE teacher. I have taught it before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but no, my training is definitely in the music base. But as you've mentioned, I have taught a huge variety of different subjects. So I have taught outdoor education and PE and IT, and I have a feeling that has been part of the reason why I approach things like I do. Yeah. I haven't had that standard training through a conservatory model that kind of puts you into one path necessarily. I've kind of gone around. I've taught in many different areas overseas, different states of Australia, doing different things, large schools, head of campus I was for a while. And I think that now that I've come back to the music, I have this approach that says, you know, why do we do things like we do things? That's kind of what my mindset's all about. And I remember when I first started really getting into the piano teaching, I reconnected with my old teacher, and who I remember her distinctly saying that, you know, you're likely, because of the way you approach things, you're likely to ruffle some feathers in a fairly traditional industry. And I've always been reasonably proud of my approach to doing that, because I think by asking questions and finding out whether we are doing things the right way and asking, can we do it better, or should we do it differently, or why don't we just give it a try anyway, we have this potential for huge growth.
Exactly. Well, as one of the quotes that we were talking about, from Albert Einstein, once you stop learning, you start dying.
I know it's a bit morbid, but it's, I think it's spot on.
I agree. I mean, my dad's in hospital at the moment, and I'm trying to. He did the tests for how his brain is operating, and he got 98% or something. And I'm thinking, Dad, you can learn how to use the internet, and I'm trying to get him to use the internet and stuff like that. So, and because I think it's really important, he needs to start learning because it really gets your brain going and stuff. I was just going to say, talking about the whole brain stuff, you mentioned that I coach running and swimming, and I actually coach running and swimming for a charity, which is called Can2, and they raise money for cancer research. And so participants go and do an event, and then they have to raise money for that during the time that they are training. And they have raised over $10 million. Over $10 million in Australia in the last 10 years. It's quite amazing. And they fund cancer researchers. So in Australia, something like only 10% of research grants are actually ever granted, 10% of all the grants.
Right.
And so they fund these researchers to do research into cancer. And they bring these researchers around to meet the participants. And I always sort of say, so did you learn music when you were a kid? And they go, oh, yeah. I played the trumpet or whatever, or piano or something. And every single one of them that I've spoken to has learnt music. And my thing is, I don't want to teach the next Beethoven or Mozart. I want to teach the next Nobel laureate to find a cure for cancer. And so that's my big thing about why I do coach the running and swimming, because it's, at the end of the day, it's helping these kids who are incredibly talented and often made talented because of us little piano teachers along the way, building creativity with them that has allowed their brain to open up and be creative. And they've done their PhD in science or whatever, and it gives them an opportunity to get work and then find cures and stuff. And they've actually had 2 major cures created in the last 10 years, which is just amazing.
So what would you say to music teachers who might be umming and ahhing about the events that we're running? We've got one-day events we're going to talk about in a moment, which is all related to the concept we're talking about. What would you say to them if they're a bit on the fence? They've got a full studio, parents seem happy, kids are playing piano. Why should teachers in that situation still consider an event like the one we're running?
Can I go back to the Albert Einstein quote? I just think...
I mean, it's pretty easy, though, to get into a comfortable groove and just keep doing the same things, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It really is. I think that a lot of people, when you get into that groove, things start to decay along the way, and you might notice that you'll have 1 or 2 students that drop off, and then you think, oh, maybe I should do something, And so I suppose have a look at your studio, have a look at what you're doing in your life, and is it matching the mindset that you want to set out to achieve? And then go, maybe I could learn something. And I always go to workshops with the sort of thought of, if I can learn one new thing, it's been worthwhile. And some of the things that we're doing is talking about getting teaching improvising, which a lot of people are absolutely terrified about. And so are kids often as well. So some really easy strategies for doing that. Some fun things to do with technical work. Getting kids to read. Is that a bloody nightmare or what? Especially when you teach using, we use a sort of music learning theory approach. So listen, sing, play, read. Oh, I knew I had to get to that.
Yeah. I was actually just talking about that whole concept with Susan, when I recorded her podcast, we were talking about the special needs teaching and the importance, again, the music learning theory concepts keep coming up. And it works in that area as well with special needs students in particular. The reading is a lot. Sometimes you wouldn't even get to it, but singing, listening, that's what it's about at the start. It's got to be.
Absolutely.
Experience.
And then that whole thing about, all the, for example, in Australia, all of the theory exams have gone online, and we're doing so much stuff online. And just, even talking about the importance of using a pencil and why it's important, and sharing ideas on how to, what have you done? What have you used? And I think the ability for teachers to actually sit down at a piano with somebody else and share ideas has to be one that is just so valuable.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because that's one of the key differences in the events that we're running. We're going to be giving everyone a digital piano to work at.
That's right.
And I think that is so crucial. One of my big kind of things that I think about is habit forming. And unfortunately, what tends to happen at many of these events that I go to and that others go to is you come back with so many great ideas, and you've written them all down, and you've got notebooks full of great things. But a week later, a month later, 2 months later, the problem is that we tend to slip back into the old routines. And unless we actually make a conscious decision to try something and try it a number of times, it doesn't tend to stick. Do you find the same?
Well, take the sport analogy. It takes 8 to 12 weeks to make something autonomic, which means that
you mean automatic, or do you mean autonomic?
No, autonomic.
Okay.
So it's integrated into the body.
Right.
So as opposed to, we automatically think about it, but so it's the same thing. It takes that long to build that habit into your teaching, and you've got to, I'm sure everyone knows with their own student, when they learn a mistake in something, to unlearn that is a great challenge. And so it's the same thing, really. It's building your experience and creating a habit through doing it once, doing it again, and then thinking at the end of the week, oh, I did it 3 times, and evaluating. And how did it work for me? So I suppose it's got to be a little bit of a process.
And I think that's going to be one of the great benefits of having a keyboard to actually work at, is that when we try something out, instead of just writing down the idea and going, wow, that's a great idea, Paul, we can actually go, okay, we're going to try it out right now, so that we've got that experiential side of learning, which you don't get in a lecture format. And I think that's going to be crucial to starting that process of habit forming.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially in improvisation, where we're going to start very, very simply and just building on one note, 2 notes, then add 3 notes, and then, okay, take that away. And also strategies for improvising when you've got older children who are readers. Because readers are terrified of improvisation. So I've got some really good strategies, and actually I'll give you a little video I put up of one of my kids after 2 weeks. He's a very good improviser, and at any chance he will do. So I'm pretty lucky there. But it's still, I use the same process with him, and it's about getting kids to go through that process, and then they can start to, oh, if you do this, I could do this. Or how about trying this?
Well, and you've been sharing some of those, some of your improvisation workbook ideas in the inner circle in our forums. It's been great to try these out. And I've used them with my students. It's great. Just a one page, here's a page, and basically you've got a really simple left-hand pattern, and you've got, here are the notes you can improvise with, make your own piece out of it. And for readers, I think this is such an approachable way to approach improvisation.
Yeah, and it's easy. I'm not inventing the wheel. This has all come from my auth background,
Mm.
doing workshops with, Richard Gill and the likes of and that sort of quality educator. You get so many amazing ideas. So they're not my ideas. I'm just sort of using them in piano. What I suppose is unique is that Orff is often used in schools and in big groups and using for recorder or for xylophones and things. But the same things you can do on piano as, was it Vashti?
Vashti.
Vashti, sorry.
Yes.
Yes. And I mean, she was great. Your podcast with Vashti was sensational about some of the things that you can do.
Yep, that's episode 45, which was about using Orff. ORFF, if you haven't heard about it, to teach piano and rhythm. It was a great episode. She took us through the studio. She had students there. They were playing instruments. It was crazy. It was great fun.
Well, we'll be doing a little bit of that, playing instruments. I have sets of chime bars, so we'll be doing some of that with the people and that come to the workshops. So they'll actually get the experience. And I find that children who do the chimes first, it takes away the pressure of the piano. So
that's what Vashti said. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So quick overview of what we're going to do. The event goes from about 10 till 3:30-ish. We're going to start with a bit of a warm-up, something pretty practical, and kind of setting the scene for the day. We've got, and that's about 10 o'clock, I think maybe 11 o'clock in Perth. I think we've got a slightly different time frame, but about 10 o'clock, so you don't have to get up too early on the morning of these workshops. We've then got 2 sessions, one before and then one after morning tea, when part of the group will go with you and we're going to be doing the improvisation work. So you've kind of talked about that, I guess, today. So far, and the other half will be with me, and we'll talk about what I'm going to do in a second, and then we swap over after morning tea, and we've got lunchtime as well, and then after the lunch we're going to talk about some of the music learning theory concepts that you've based a lot of your work and your teaching on, patterns, rhythms, some of the Orff ideas, the way you use singing as well. Do you want to talk just a little bit more about what teachers might expect in that session? I mean, I know we could cover lots here.
Here all afternoon. Well, it's really about, probably for a lot of it is actually getting away from the piano. And I find that once you get kids away from the piano and doing rhythms and singing and patterns, then when they get to the piano, it's already in their body. So there's a lot of stuff that we'll be doing around that.
Yeah.
So lots of singing and using percussion instruments, because I can tell you, your kids will love using percussion instruments. I am like, I do, Royal March of the Lion, which is the
Saint-Saëns?
Yes.
Carnival of the Animals.
Yeah, I did the arrangement, or Gillian and I did the arrangement of, I think, the one that's in the preliminary book from the Piano for Leisure. But just getting kids to do the drums, Lion March, Lion March, Lion March. And just that, of getting that and playing along with it, that the rhythm is in their body. Because what you'll get a lot is... or something like that. They'll start playing the rhythms.
Both hands together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, God, I just had a really good question. Can't remember.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Don't you hate that? Well, so tell me, what are you doing in yours? Tim's teaching toolkit.
Yeah, so look, I was going to focus on one aspect of teaching, and maybe focusing on teaching teen beginners, because I know that's something that I know a lot about and can be quite difficult. But what I actually thought I'd do, this is what my schedule from this year's presenting looked like, and so I've given, I don't know, a number of speeches and keynotes and things around Australia in particular this year. So I thought I'm actually just going to take some key things from each of those talks that I've given and the things that I do in my studio and package it into one really practical session. And so I'm going to talk about three main areas. One's going to be teaching strategies. Secondly, technology, and technique, funnily enough. And people haven't heard me talk about technique all that much because I guess I focus more on the creative things. But what I'm going to be doing is talking about how I use, and I think you might cover this too, how you can make scales an actual practical thing that students can use by incorporating improvisation and backing tracks and things like that with it. Because I would challenge most teachers to ask their students in their next lesson, why are you learning scales? Or why do I put so much focus on you learning scales as a teacher to the student, and see what they say? And even my students, until I've gone through this with them a number of times and shown them that melodies will come from scales. Scales form the basis, the root notes of chord progressions. It is so fundamental, but we often don't make that connection between a technical exercise and its practical use. Sure, it helps get the fingers moving. It learns patterns which come up in music. That's true, but there's so much more to it. So talking about things like that to do with technique in technology, everyone knows that I'm a big user of technology, but I also know that there is so much out there and it can be overwhelming. So we'll just be covering maybe 2 or 3 crucial apps that I use all the time and why, and really try to help teachers form a habit with those apps if they choose to, because that's the other problematic thing when it comes to technology. There is so many options. I find, and I know in the Inner Circle forums, people come up with a new app that they really love. Ningenius, we talked about a little while ago, and I used that for a while, but I didn't have the habit, so I've kind of stopped using it now. But there's no reason why. It's still a great app. I just didn't quite form that habit. Did you keep using that in the end?
My kids remind me all the time.
Yeah, right. Okay.
It's time for Ningenius, because I've got little. I put them up in the Inner Circle. I made a little Ningenius score sheet.
Yep.
So you get. So for those people who don't know what Ningenius is, it's a really great app for getting kids to learn to read music. So, and you can use what I always do, because of how I teach. I want them to read the music and play the note. So they have to actually play the note on the keyboard, or you can choose the A, B, C, D, or E, or whatever. But there's music playing, and it's like adrenaline to get to the game, and it's about getting the highest score. Yeah. And because I teach kids in class, the competition is unbelievable.
It'd be great, wouldn't it?
And they're like, I wish I had multiple iPads. I wish I had that I could actually just hand out 8 iPads at a time. Unfortunately, I don't have 8 iPads to do that. But there is so much competition, and it's like the prize. So I do a lot of things where, Johnny was sitting there playing with beautifully curled fingers. Come and have a game of Ningenius. So everyone will come around, and then you'll see everyone's got beautifully curled fingers.
Yeah, right.
Because they want to be next.
It's good.
So it's all about, reinforcing the teaching technique, or the technique that you want to achieve. And so, yeah.
I always try and remind teachers in workshops that technology is simply a toolbox or a toolkit, and you've got to choose the right tool to take out to solve the problem, or, so you wouldn't pick out the spanner if you want to bang a nail in. You've got to use the right tool, and you don't have to use them all at once. You may just want to be working on one thing, so you use one tool. But hopefully through a session like this, you'll be able to know which tool is a good one for you to use. So that's what I'll be talking about in the technology area. And for teaching strategies, we'll be talking about teenagers and a few things to do with pop, but it certainly won't be the whole focus, because I've talked a lot about that, and people have seen my courses and things about it. But one thing I do want to talk about is harmonizing, and the way I use harmonizing and transposing right from the beginning with students, and how even beginners learning very simple Mary Had a Little Lamb can learn the basic concepts of harmonizing, and how important, in my opinion, that is for pianists.
Oh, fantastic. Exactly. And that keys in so well with doing improvisation when you go, okay, so now play that in F major, or they were playing in C major, they change the keys. That's brilliant, Tim.
Cool. So that's...
I want to go yours.
Yeah. We'll see. I might let you have a sneak peek at some stage. I don't know how that's going to work, but anyway. So that's kind of that's the overview of what I'm going to talk about. And I think one of the other things too, people will have seen if you're interested in these workshops, by the way, and you're listening to this, if you're at a computer, you can head to timtopham.com/transform. The workshops are called Transform Your Teaching, and they're in Australia, in Melbourne and Sydney next week, as for when this podcast goes live. Adelaide in October, Perth and Brisbane in November. So we're in all those areas, and do make sure you get a ticket. It's we're certainly not doing it to make much money from it. It's pretty reasonably priced, $50 or $60 at full price. Although you might just get in with an early bird depending on when this podcast goes live. I should have checked that. But you're going to be having a practical day, a fun day, and you're going to be walking away with lots of ideas, but hopefully not overwhelmed as well, because we don't want to do that.
There's also the hot seat. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the hot seat's an idea I've got from some other live events I've seen. And what I want to do is give a teacher the chance to come up the front and workshop some ideas with us that is just particular to those teachers. So picture it like a masterclass, but as a teacher, you're not coming up to perform, you're coming up just to have a chat. And so you might want to ask us specifically, you've just started teaching groups and you really want to know some activities that you can use. Maybe you've got a teenage boy who's not really talking to you anymore and needs some new repertoire ideas. So we'll get stuck into that for you. Maybe you've got some business questions that you'd like to ask. By being up the front, we'll have a discussion, but because it's a masterclass in effect, everyone in the room will be able to learn from the discussions we're having and the things that we're doing. So that's the concept of the hot seat. And you'll find out once you've registered, you'll get an email from us with information about how you can put your name down to be in the hot seat if it interests you.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. Because a lot of people often have lots of they don't realize that they have an idea, but then they hear someone go, "Oh, I've got this problem." They go, "Oh, actually, yeah, I've got that problem too."
Yeah, that's right.
Something I could really do with some help with.
Yeah, and look, I'd love for a teacher to come up and go, "You know what, guys? I don't reckon that way that you showed us is actually very good. How about you have a look at what I do?" I'm very much open to the fact that we can all learn from each other. So let's share all our ideas in these events.
Absolutely, yeah. Certainly, as I said, none of the ideas I have are my own. I've just plagiarized from everyone.
Well, we all do that. That's what, it's probably why I haven't chosen to be a Suzuki teacher or a Simply Music teacher. But I love the theories and ideas in those approaches. And I like kind of taking them and using bits and pieces in my own to create my own things. I think that's a great way to do it.
Absolutely.
So tell us, what professional development have you done in the last 6 to 12 months related to music? Well, and I'm going to rephrase that question because I know you almost go every weekend and do something. In fact, you're off straight after this to another lecture. So tell us about a recent professional development or a lecture you went to that really made an impact on you.
2 or 3 weeks ago, I went to the New South Wales Orff Association's workshop with Richard Gill and had 5 hours with my hero, Richard Gill, and it was just fantastic.
You better tell the international audience who Richard Gill is if they haven't heard.
He is an international composer and conductor. He conducts opera, and he's very involved in Australia at the moment in a mentor in getting music education back into schools because funding is drying up, as it is everywhere in the arts. And he has created a mentoring program in schools in New South Wales in Australia at the moment, which is working brilliantly, and it's really fantastic. And he's really I mean, he's in his 70s, and he's just amazing. And I was lucky enough, stupidly, because I know him. He goes, there was a bit where he wanted to do some improvisation on a piano, and because most of the people there were school teachers, like school music teachers, so often they don't play piano. And he went, "Paul, mate, you can come play that." I'm like, "Oh no, don't make this." And we were improvising in a 20th century style. I went, "Oh, just go for it.
Go with it."
And had an absolute ball, but I learnt so much. We started singing. The day started with singing 13th century chant, and we finished with singing a Stravinsky work, which was almost the same as the 13th century chant. It was quite amazing, and we covered all of the harmony that happened from the 13th century to the 20th century. It was just amazing, and understanding what was happening with the harmony, and then from a school teaching perspective, how to teach that. And so all of the stuff, you would have loved it because you were talking about harmony and improvisation. And transposition, and that's exactly what he was talking about in this workshop. It was truly an amazing experience.
Wow, that's brilliant. Yeah, sounds good. I still, to be honest, haven't heard him speak live, and everyone talks so much about him. And I missed a recent opportunity when he was in Melbourne, but I'm hanging out to hear Richard Gill.
So tell me, what was your latest?
My very latest was a conference called Education Changemakers, and this is a group of people who go around the world trying to get together the people that want to change education, and this is predominantly classroom educators. So there was 350 people we met in Melbourne, and it was a very, very cool conference. It was had a really kind of young, hip vibe to it. You could text and the coffee would arrive over here, and amazing food. And it was a real pump up kind of event. And we had these speakers who were, there was this amazing early 20-year-old woman from Africa who has come from poverty and no education in her family to running and building her own school. Incredible stories of change, and we had students come in and talk about things that they were doing in their classrooms. It was a really great event. I really did enjoy it. So that was the most recent one, and I think the other ones I've done have been workshops and conferences where I've been presenting at them. And one thing I do like to do when I speak at events is actually stay around for the whole event. And I know some speakers come in and they fly in and they do their thing and they leave. And I think it's such a waste because there's so much that I still want to learn from other people. So I was in Brisbane at some workshops up there. There was the music tech conferences and the MTNA in Texas, which was great fun too. So yeah, a fair bit went on this year. But learned a heap in the process.
Oh, great. And, Tim, I stumbled upon your podcasts probably at least a year and a half ago now, when I think you were under 10.
Yeah. It's about 18 months.
Sorry?
It's about 18 months.
Yeah. And it was like, wow, this is fantastic. Somebody's actually doing, because I'd actually thought about doing this myself, because I think I love learning stuff and I love meeting people and learning more things. And you do learn so much from doing this sort of thing. And especially doing workshops, I learn often as much as the participants.
Totally.
From them. But why are you doing it? Because I love it, but so tell us, why are you actually doing it? And what's your end game with it?
It certainly was never my original intention to start to become a teacher of teachers and to become someone who can inspire other teachers to change what they do. But it has become an absolute driving passion in the last 2 to 3 years, in particular, as things have grown and the podcast has become more recognized and the blog has as well. And I have this strong drive to change the nature of piano teaching around the world. That's what I want to do, because there is still so many students who come through piano teaching in particular, but probably all instrumental teaching, with very little to show for it and very little passion for it at the end. And even students who go through and do all these exams up to very high levels and then they quit. It's just an utter shame. And I want to make a change in that outcome for students. And the best way to do that for me, while I could do that to my own, however many students I can teach, if I can teach hundreds of teachers to do different things, then hopefully I can impact on thousands or tens of thousands of students. And that's what drives me.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely a great reason to be doing it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's making an impact. I do get some good feedback, so I know that there is change going on. And I would just love people who are listening to this podcast and any of these podcasts. If you're enjoying it, then please share it with other teachers so that we can get other teachers doing the same thing. That is why I put all the effort in that I do. As crazy as it is. Now
talking about arts education, I went and saw Julie Andrews.
Yeah, wow.
At the Opera House. She in an interview with her because she's directing the Australian Opera's My Fair Lady, which is the 60th anniversary of the production that she was in 60 years ago.
Wow.
So she's in her 80s. And she has just done a television show for Netflix on arts education and the importance of arts education. And she's done it with her daughter. And one of the things that she says is, are we lucky or what? And, you know, I sometimes think to myself, you know, we're really lucky to be able to have this sort of stuff. But I was thinking about it, and I think it's just really important that we are actually doing and promoting arts education and teaching in the best possible way we can. You know, I see a lot of, often because I teach a lot of primary age kids, I often get a lot of kids who've been learning at school with headphones on and just doing a 2-minute, or, you know, they're having a 30-minute lesson, but there's 6 of them having a 30-minute lesson all on headphones. And so the teacher goes around to each one. So they effectively get a 5-minute lesson. I think so. That's not education. That's not what music teaching is about. So why I'm passionate about music education as well is also about that whole arts education, that it improves our community.
Absolutely.
And the arts are so important, and that wouldn't it be great if those people could be involved in the arts in some way? And it builds audience for professional musicians as well.
And you know, we don't even need to talk about the research. I think most people would know about the positive effects that music has, all that kind of stuff. We all agree, we're all musicians anyway. But if there's one thing that we can do to show that we're serious, is be, 1, professional, 2, be the best we can be. And that means to continually develop ourselves and our teaching ability through professional development.
Exactly.
Yeah. Working in schools too. I've worked in schools pretty much all my life, and I know that education keeps changing, it keeps evolving, and classroom teachers have to keep current and fresh and keep doing new things, because the schools will latch on to a new idea that they think is the way to move forward, and they'll go, right, all teachers need to now do this. And it's like, well, okay, let's go. This is what we're doing. Some would obviously get very frustrated by that, but good teachers will go, right, let's try this out. Unfortunately, of course, in independent music education, that doesn't happen. And that's when we can end up in our little silo doing our own thing that may be working, but could be better.
Exactly. And this is the opportunity. This is why we're doing these workshops, so that people have the opportunity, and they're reasonably low cost. People can come along and be part of it, and also make new friends and socialize.
Yeah.
That, which I just think that's one of the great things. I love going to the workshops to meet new people.
Yeah, let's face it, that's, you know, another half of the whole equation of a live conference or workshop, isn't it? It's meeting people, hanging out with physical people. All the online stuff is great. I'm obviously passionate about it, but nothing quite beats hanging out and having a coffee with someone.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. Well, look, I think we should probably start wrapping it up. So for people who are interested in the events, I'll quickly run through the dates. Melbourne is 21st of September and Sydney the 25th of September. This is 2016, both in school holiday time. Adelaide is...
So Melbourne is a Wednesday, isn't it?
It is a Wednesday, yes. And Sydney's a Sunday. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think all the others are Sundays. So Adelaide's the 2nd of October. Perth is the 6th of November and Brisbane the 20th of November, all around about 10 till 3 or thereabouts. And you can grab tickets and find out more, read about what's actually happening, timtopham.com/transform. So is there anything else you wanted to cover quickly before we wrap it up, Paul?
Not that I can think of, Tim.
Beautiful. That's been good. I think before we started talking about this, we said, look, we could probably chat for about 3 hours on these kind of topics, but I think we've done pretty well. We're right on 50 minutes.
Exactly.
So look, thanks so much for joining me today, and thanks so much for working with me on these live events. It's going to be so much fun. I actually can't wait to do it. It's going to be great.
Yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to it.
Brilliant. All right. Well, I'll see you very soon. And if you've got any questions, guys, about any of the events or what we're doing, just head to the show notes page for this episode, which will be timtopham.com/episode 58. And we'll pop some links there to any of the things we've talked about. And you mentioned a video that you've got too, so we'll chuck that on the page too.
No problem.
Great. Thanks so much, Paul. We'll speak to you again soon.
Cheers, Tim.
See ya. If the idea of a piano teachers community where you get to access the best educational resources, rub shoulders with expert teachers from around the world, and have immediate access to feedback for any of your questions, then Inner Circle membership is for you. The Inner Circle is my private community of piano teachers from across the globe who share a commitment to creating and delivering the most inspiring, modern and progressive learning experiences for their students. Membership is now open, so head to timtopham.com/community to find out more and get involved today. I can't wait to see you on the inside.